Our sponsor today is GLSA. For those non-members who may be dropping in on the call today, GLSA, or Group Legal Services Association, is an affiliate of the American Bar Association, a professional membership organization representing the legal services plan industry and provider attorneys. And joining GLSA is just a good way for solos and small firms to increase their business. Check it out at glsaonline.org. Okay, my name is Tom Martin, and I'll be your host. Our teleconference today is client reviews. What are they good for? Absolutely everything. With Will Peterson of ROG and Laura Nelson of Broadly. I'm very excited to introduce our guests. They're two professionals who have a great deal of experience with client reviews and ratings and are here to share their knowledge on the subject with us and give us some insight into how we can make client reviews work for us. First, Will Peterson, as the Attorney Experience Manager at ROG Legal. Will and his team take care of more than 12,000 ROG network attorneys. He is responsible for maintenance and retention of the network, ensures attorneys have excellent interactions using the technology and customer service that ROG provides, and also leads the ROG Network Attorney Advisory Board and Technology Innovation Committees, and serves as a member of the Internal Release Management Team and is a member of the Futures Committee. And prior to his leadership role in attorney relations, Will joined ROG Customer Care in 2002, and he held a few positions there in management roles. Laura, and I will stop talking and hand it over to them in a minute, but Laura Nelson has collaborated with local businesses for over 10 years in her career as a business manager and marketer. She's currently director of marketing at broadly.com, which helps local businesses improve their online presence and grow word of mouth. Laura earned an MBA from the University of Michigan, where she focused on business strategy and marketing, and a BFA at Carnegie Mellon University. You both have very impressive credentials, but I've done enough talking, and I'd like for each of you to tell us a little bit about you and the companies you work for, as I know each of you come to client reviews from a slightly different point of view. So Laura, let's first hear from you.
Sure. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. As you mentioned, I work at a company called Broadly.com. We help businesses of all types build their online reputations through great client reviews on the platforms that matter most. So that includes Google, Yelp, Facebook, the business website. What we've developed is a system to help businesses stand out and shine. I've been in this online reputation space for several years. Prior to this, I was at a company called Reputation.com. So it's something I've been working on and thinking about for quite a while. And I'm excited to talk with you guys today on what that means for your practice.
Fantastic. And how about you, Will?
Well, yeah, and thank you again, as Laura said, for that warm introduction. In my role and in my time here at ROG, I think I probably have, the different side of it, whereas Laura's, helping attorneys get those reviews, I'm using it from the other side of reviewing those reviews. We do extensive surveying with our plan members here at ROG. Again, ROG is an employer-based, primarily legal plan provider. And so when plan members interact with our network attorneys, we survey 100% of them, and then we utilize those surveys, or as we were calling them here, client reviews, to get a gauge of obviously maybe service impacts that not only ROG is kind of falling short in. So it's kind of interesting too, because I know what it's like to be reviewed. Back in the day when I was working with our plan members, I myself would get back those plan member and customer reviews. So I kind of know what that's like to read your own reviews and go through that process. And obviously they're a huge help here in not only helping us change systems, processes, but also discussing service gaps and also learning more about how attorneys deliver legal services too.
Right, and I know that for lawyers, client reviews, they can just sometimes the term, client reviews, it could just raise the stress levels a little bit about what kind of feedback we might get. But I know that's not necessarily the case, and it shouldn't be that way. And that's why I think that you're both excellent resources for the lawyers and legal professionals we have listening today. I think the first place to start is with the basics. So first off, what is a client review or survey, and how do you work with them in your company? Laura, if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. I'll start with the first question. You asked, what is a client review?
Yeah.
When we talk about reviews these days, we're typically referring to that testimonial, or as you said, survey that happens online. And that's when the client provides, their feedback about their experience, with your practice somewhere online. This could be Google, this could be Yelp, this could be Avo, or some other public forum. And the follow-up question, I'm sorry, what did you ask after that?
Oh, after that I asked, and how do you work with them in your company?
Oh, okay. Sure. So our company is a software platform. So where we are coming from is the objective to generate more reviews for a practice. People are used to writing reviews for something like a restaurant or a retail experience, but really need to be prompted. That silent majority who is happy needs to be activated. And so that's where Broadly, helps facilitate that process, after a client engagement.
And I actually did see your exhibit booth at the GLSA conference and looked a little bit at what Broadly does, and it looks like it has a really interesting interface and way of getting clients who are happy with services to give their feedback, and we'll definitely get into that a little more later. But Will, what is a client survey or review?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it is definitely, we would call them surveys, and they're, we approach it more from that, straightforward scientific basis. I mean, we follow up with a member after they've had an interaction with a network attorney. And really, that's not just and we're also surveying, I should clarify too, and not just on an interaction with the network attorney, but also the interaction with us as a company, which I know a lot of other legal providers do the same thing. And then really, it's a pretty extensive process on this side. So ours are probably a little different in what people think of as, your new kind of traditional review in the sense of what Laura's talking about, because we'll go through a series of questions on a lot of different varying degrees. And I know that Broadly and other services offer that deep dive. We're going into different sections of service delivery more than anything, and then, asking on a 10-point scale. And then also some free-form comments at the end. So, we utilize that data, very similar to what Laura has, but again, we use it for internal purposes. At this current time, it's not anything we share externally, except we do share with our attorneys now, and that's been kind of a change where our attorneys behind their on their attorney portal can view those. So we're trying to now use it as a vehicle to get attorneys comfortable, which is, I'm sure, a conversation we're going to have a little bit more of as we go, comfortable with reviews and seeing what outcomes of reviews are and what they really show, and maybe try to help them with their service delivery and their interactions with clients now. So that's a change that really just happened for us only in the last year. Prior to that, it was everything from an internal standpoint, just so that we're making sure that those service deliveries are good and we're delivering.
And that's exactly why I think the two of you as guests are a good mix, because with Laura, she's more of the consumer-facing aspect of it. Like when they interact with a lawyer or they're thinking of doing it, they're going to be looking at reviews and learning about that. To select the lawyer they want to deal with, and you're coming at it more from almost like a management standpoint internally about how to use this information to get better. And so the next question I had kind of takes that one step further, which is about the different types of reviews there are, or the different types of surveys there are. Are there different types of metrics that one can use to measure reviews or ratings? and how do they accomplish different things? Laura?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm glad that you pointed out that, we're coming from, different perspectives and
Right.
in terms of like external and internal reviews, because there's,
Right.
lots of different ways that you can, collect that feedback and use it to your advantage. The world I'm coming from, in terms of the types of client reviews there are,
Yeah.
there's star ratings and, a star rating accompanied by, a text review. Some people will just leave a star rating, across these various platforms that I mentioned and post that and move on with their day. Others, however, they're going to provide more context about that experience or provide more detail behind that star rating and why they gave that practice 5 stars. And that can be more valuable, especially if somebody's researching and evaluating, whether to hire a firm.
Right.
Not all reviews are created equal, though. I think that's where you're getting with that question. It really depends, from our point of view on where they are and how many people will see those reviews. Depending on the platform, they may accomplish a lot. So with Google, for instance, you're going to get some SEO value out of that, especially if it links back to your website and you're doing all of the right things in terms of linking your public pages. That some other platforms don't get the same kind of consumer traffic. So, knowing where to place your bets and where to send your clients really makes a difference in terms of showing up in a local search, where your prospective clients are looking.
Mm-hmm. And I guess you talked a little bit about the different platforms. Is one better than another, or it just depends on
Great
what you're trying to
question.
accomplish?
Yeah, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish, but we do know that people are starting their search on Google. Whether they're just looking generically for legal professional in their area, they'll start there, or if they get a recommendation from a friend, they still need to get in touch. If they know the name of your practice, they still need to Google that and find your phone number, find your contact info, and see what other people are saying about the practice. So, we know that that Google review factors into that local search. It's not the only thing in the algorithm, but it's an important element of it. So, that tends to be more valuable than something like Yelp, or even, a lot of people are familiar with Avo, even more valuable than Avo, because not every consumer is familiar with that platform, and what it does for legal professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I
Well,
think,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Tom. No, I think, and to Laura's point, I mean, really, in my mind, the worst review is no reviews, is what I'm hearing from, the consumer public right now. We recently, because obviously ROG is researching and looking at the future where, reviews are, and is this what members are wanting? And unequivocally, I will say yes. We did a survey of over 1,000 of our active members as we were preparing to create our mobile app this last year that launched. And, we asked, without prodding, what's the top 3 things that you would want from the mobile app for it to deliver? And unequivocally, outside of the attorney search, it was ratings, and ratings and results. And as we've dug more into it, what you're finding is, like I said, people are so worried about bad ratings, but and of course that is a concern, but it's really not the bad ratings that are going to hurt you. It's like I said initially, it's the no ratings, because and that's what we work a lot with, on our attorneys that are wanting more referrals and how do I get more referrals. The more consumers can know about you, and that includes, like, for us, for them to fill out their profile as much as they possibly can and let us know what your social media sites are, your LinkedIn and everything. Those seem like little things, but that's the way the consumers are going. And to have a rating, it just makes us, it makes them know. And so why not get ahead of it and control it as much as you can by, being the master of your destiny and pushing for those reviews and getting those reviews. So it's definitely something our membership is wanting, even though they know they're getting a list of attorneys that they feel from us, obviously is vetted and has come through, and we're presenting them to as a plan provider. They're still wanting that extra level of research.
Yeah, from my experience too, they just want that third party credibility, like that
Yeah.
that word of mouth that now digitized has become, online client reviews where they could look to someone else who's not interested, what's going on, and they give their 2 cents, and it gives them a much better sense of who a lawyer is. And I guess they get the sense when there is no review that, why isn't there one? There's
Right.
just a
Well, yeah, and it's important too, like I was talking about with control, and I'm sure Laura can chime in on this, to use the vernacular of who we're talking to, attorneys, right? I'm not saying you want to lead the witness, but the way we do our surveys is we steer the plan members. So in this case, you'd be steering your clients towards service. That's the biggest fear I hear from all attorneys when they're talking about reviews, right? This is a results-based industry, but many times, no matter how hard you work, you may not be in control of the results for criminal cases or family law, and that's where I get it that it's a concern. The argument is always if you're a plumber or someone along those lines, and you're delivering a service, you have such control over the fact that you're going to do a great job, and you're going to do it. You can control it more than an attorney can. But what we see in our data and what I see in the reviews that we get so often are the comments aren't about what my result was. I'll see cases where maybe it didn't end up, they had a divorce settlement where it didn't work out how they wanted, but they focus so much on service because of the way that we try to drive our surveys to talk about, were you courteous? Were you calling me back? Were you always available? Were you, friendly? It's still, so it's really, I think, and maybe Laura could speak on that. It's also about controlling the surveys so that you're getting somebody to tell you about your service delivery. That takes whether or not they like the outcome, and that I think is one of the big barriers as we talk about attorneys using client reviews that I get all the time. And and Laura, I know you have the experience of working with a lot of different industries, so I'm sure you can kind of see those differences as you jump between.
What do you think about that, Laura?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a great point. The great reviews that we read from, clients engaging, with the legal professional, for family law reasons or for personal injury, et cetera, they're writing about their relationship, with the team.
Yep.
They're writing about, courtesy, exactly as, Will said. They're writing about lines of communication. Did they feel like they were taken care of? Did they feel like, their team did everything that they could, on their behalf? That's what they're writing about. Did they trust who they were working with? Because, they do know at the end of the day they don't have full control over that outcome, but they do want to know that they have a team, that has their back. And so those are some of the qualities of the great reviews that we see. People satisfied with the experience, people happy with the choice and who they chose to, engage with, because, the process is not a day, and it is a relationship over time.
I think
Yeah, I mean,
that's
how many times have we all had interactions where, like, I recently had a floor installed, and I won't name names, but it came out beautiful. It looks
yeah.
amazing. I love it. It's what we've always wanted. If I were to rate the service that I got and the attitude and the 5 hours I spent with the people that put it in, I would have given them a bad review, ironically enough, where I've had other interactions that maybe things didn't work out how I wanted. They couldn't fix something in my car, but if I felt like they gave me everything, I rate on that. And I think I'm not alone. And that's what we see so often. So, I think attorneys need to kind of break down that barrier. Plus, there's so much to learn. It's funny. I mean, would you want to work 40 hours on a case and be the best lawyer you could possibly be, and then have all that be derailed because you don't return phone calls or you're not answering email? I mean, it just also, you can find some really amazing things about small fixes, because that's really what a lot of the issues and concerns we get here are, small fixes about service delivery that can just transform the way that you're viewed by your clients.
Right. So to keep in mind for lawyers that the process, aka the relationship with the client, is just as important, if not more so, than the result you get for them.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, particularly
Mhm.
today. I just think it's a different consumer. Everything is oriented around how you're getting stuff. And consumers don't delineate like they used to, where they go, well, I know an experience with, this person's going to be different. I mean, even your doctor now, every time you go, you get a request to survey, and it's actually critically important to them, right? Because their compensation could be based on that. So it's the Amazonification of the entire world. I know that, and I never want to compare an attorney. I'm really always careful to compare an attorney, to obviously like earbuds that I'm ordering on Amazon, not the same way to rate them. And that's why if you take control of how you get those client reviews, it can really help a lot.
Well, Laura, let me ask you that. Um, how should a lawyer ask for a client review, or should one even ask at all? Because there seems to be this, question about that. Like if you ask, maybe you're going to influence the result, or you don't want to come off as seeming too pushy. How do you do that?
Great question. And it is a tough, thing to ponder, because you don't want to feel like you're bothering your client by asking. You might feel like you're putting the idea to say something negative in their minds, and you're unsure what they might come back with. There's different approaches, and what we do at Broadly is kind of frame it in this whole concept of, following up, saying thank you, and asking for feedback. So what that means in practice, just for us, is, our system asks whether they would recommend, that end client, that is, whether they'd recommend their practice to a friend. And based on that response, our communication says yes or no. So we're not explicitly, from the outset asking for a review. We're asking this, typical NPS type question with a simple yes or no. And then based on that response, go ahead.
Just to unpack that for people that might not be familiar with it, NPS, what does that refer to?
Sure. It's just the simple question of, whether someone would recommend, a product or service to someone else. It's typically on a 1 to 10 scale. And, based on what Will has said a few minutes ago, it sounds kind of in tune with what they're doing with their internal surveys. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, that is. We do the 1 to 10 scale.
So
we've had a lot of
kind
internal debate about that, though, right? Yeah, I mean, the world likes the 5 stars, but it's more accurate and scientific, I feel like, when it can be 1 to 10. So that's always an internal debate that rages. But
it is, and what we've found in our experience, like there's a large middle, which we call the neutrals, and it's hard to extract exactly what puts someone on that spectrum in a short survey. So what we do is, we create this simple yes/no path where people are self-selecting into, one of 2 routes. If they're unsatisfied, you may have, had trouble with that, but, we try to take that confusion out of the mix. So if they're unsatisfied, we take them to a separate landing page that's private, that's offline, and help the practice collect that feedback, help them understand, where there were opportunities for them to serve their client better. What that does with our platform is it generates that feedback immediately to the inbox of the legal professional, to the office manager. It can be more than one person, and enables them to follow up and make that client whole. If there's anything outstanding, if there's anything that they can do better to resolve that situation, they have that opportunity before it becomes public. Conversely, go ahead.
Oh no, Laura, I was going to say that I when I saw your event booth and I checked out how Broadly worked, I thought that was really clever because it addresses one of those issues that I mentioned before that's a big issue for lawyers, which is the potential sting of a bad review, right? Because we're all worried about pushing them to reviews in the first place about that, fear that might happen. But the way that your system is set up, it actually takes them out of a public review if they said, I probably wouldn't feel like recommending them, but you still get the value out of it, which is that feedback to be able to improve your process. I think that's really great.
Yeah, exactly. And so, kind of how I was saying a couple minutes ago, it's not asking for a review overtly. It's asking about their experience first and then pushing them to the appropriate place. So, on the other side of the coin, if they are happy, let's activate that silent majority, as I mentioned earlier, and make it easy for them to leave feedback where it's going to matter to the practice. So in the case of Broadly, it is, they click on that yes, and, our system does a scan of where they're logged in on their mobile device or on their laptop, whatever device they're using, and sends them to their platform of their choice. That way they're not searching for a listing, they're not going through a bunch of different steps. They're being prompted at that point, hey, would you mind, it is just overtly, without even having to ask that question about a review, just prompting them, with that review dialogue and making it super easy. So at that point, it is more of a review ask, but again, not, upfront, like, hey, leave us a review, and,
right.
Putting that risk out there before knowing whether they're happy.
Right. Well, Will, if I can ask you, what in your experience, what makes a good client review? Like, what are some of the things that one would hope for in getting a good survey response?
Sure, yeah. And I was going to do one clarifier too. I mean, it's really interesting because, with what Laura was talking about, we look at it almost a little, we look at it more cumulatively, right? So an attorney over their lifetime will actually continue to compile the average of that 1 to 10 score that they receive in totality to use, so we are trying to really judge an attorney's performance over time, knowing that everybody's going to have a bad review here and there, and then we kind of dig down into the granular. So that is just kind of an interesting philosophy for everybody, I think, to think about. There are always different ways to look at it, so that just kind of, I thought that was interesting. But to answer your question, Tom, I mean, what makes a good review? I mean, for us, it is generally, I see two things overall, because we have this program we call the Elite Service Award. So when clients rate an attorney a 10, we actually prompt them and say, hey, you obviously gave this an attorney a 10 because you thought this experience was wonderful. Would you like to nominate this attorney for an Elite Service Award? And if so, tell us what made this experience so interesting. And we have a cross-departmental team inside, because what we like to do is try to bring all these teams in that sometimes have to deal with the yucky stuff and sit in here and read all these awesome reviews. So that's kind of a fun part we have once a month, But what you see constantly in those things are three different kinds of themes, I guess I could sum up. Obviously, they were treated well and held well emotionally. Legal matters are emotional. They're difficult. I see so often, like somebody's going through a bankruptcy, they said they made me feel human again. I read that over and over again. So it's kind of amazing, and I think that's something that we all need to keep in mind, particularly attorneys. Like, you are really delivering a life-changing service in the right way, but it's so important to think about the person's emotional state when they're going through a lot of what they're going through. And we even see that with estate planning, because nobody likes to be faced with their own mortality. So it's just really important to, always be considerate of that emotional side. That's what you see, not outcome based, but really just on how they were treated throughout the experience. The
Right.
other is just service delivery. You see, every time I called, I either got a response or I knew that that message was getting delivered. You see often a lot of the times the things that people are thinking are above and beyond are just attorneys who are delivering great service. Some of that speaks to, unfortunately, the bar can sometimes be a little set low for what their expectations might have been from other interactions. But generally, it's just, making them feel like when they call, they're getting it answered. We've even seen great surveys for saying, the attorney, couldn't help me with my case in the end, but they quickly got me scheduled, took my time, and everything. So a lot of it's that service delivery, and I guess I would say, really from the third side of things, the good service is sometimes when you can control that outcome. So I'd say for like estate planning attorneys and things like that, it's all about timeliness. People just want to know. We rarely see, though, I will say, when it comes to bad surveys, there's never any talk about usually money or charging or any of those things. They focus on the really those kind of three aspects primarily, and that's how you can get good reviews. For good or for bad, many times it's not about kind of like the legal knowledge and all the things that you're delivering. They're going to focus on those other kind of aspects.
Hmm. How about you, Laura? What in your experience amounts to a good client review?
I think Will touched on some great points about just the service delivery. I'll add one more about expectations. Were expectations set in the right way, ahead of time,
Absolutely.
and were they met? Because sometimes we'll see in the case of a bad review, it's just that they were expecting one thing, got another. Maybe their phone calls weren't returned expeditiously, whatever the case may be. And then to elaborate on Will's point as well about, legal knowledge, it's going to be more about what they felt or how they were treated throughout the process, and less about, the professional, legal knowledge, credentials, etc. We see that a lot in medical reviews as well. People aren't doctors. There is an imbalance of knowledge and information. So, it's more about, their perspective on the situation.
And I would add to Laura too, when you talk about expectation setting, that's huge. I mean, that probably goes into a whole other conference call, Tom, about customer service delivery. But as you know, as a practicing lawyer, I mean, there can be times where out of your control, and it's another reason why lawyers are scared of using reviews. You're going to have to wait 18 months for a court date, right? But as long as that was fully explained to the client and there are check-ins that occur, we see that all the time as well too. Is even though I had to wait forever, I remember reading this quote exactly. Even though I had to wait 18 months for my case, that's why I used the time. I always knew the attorney was thinking about me, right? I mean, how simple was that? Because they checked in during the entire time of the case. So expectation setting, that's a big one, because that goes to the other question you might have. How do you get a bad review? And not setting expectations, you can still deliver amazing results. And if they were expecting something different, they're going to ding you for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always a concern about getting the bad review, and I think you both have addressed how you avoid bad reviews, right? Is by setting clear expectations, or if things change, to modify them so you're keeping the client in the loop, and have those regular check-ins. I mean, one of the number one, I think it is the number one complaint against lawyers is lack of communication. So if that's done more regularly, then there's less worry about that.
And I don't know. I mean, this is the consumer in me, but I don't trust somebody with all good reviews either. I think it's okay if somebody has a bad review here or there. I mean, you have to be a human. I mean, and I think that breaks down a lot of trust in me as a consumer when I see something and I go, not everybody can love this person. and there may be the few rare examples, but I think and I've heard people say this before. I mean, I think it actually helps you. You know, nobody wants to be a 10 really, because then it becomes unbelievable. It's okay if you're a 9, and you have a few in there because it makes it all look valid. I don't know, and I'm sure Laura has a whole other side from the consumer facing world, because I know you've got a different collection methodology, but that's my 2 cents. Is like, we never hold it against somebody if they have one bad situation. Believe me, I've talked to enough members in my day to understand that sometimes you're not going to make them happy no matter what you do. So that's interesting as well.
Exactly. And, I'll just kind of add to that point really is, even with a system in place like ours, or you're going to, from time to time, you will get some negative feedback online. And because the people who are not happy, they're going to go out of their way to ensure that other people see it, right? So, and consumers are wise to that and, take it all into consideration when they're reading about a practice. What I will say, though, is, how someone responds to that, how the legal team then, goes online and responds to the review is important.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about getting in a war and, airing out all your grievances with that client who may, by the way, be the worst client on earth.
Yeah.
But, how they address it and, what we recommend, for those who are wondering is, to keep it brief and to take it offline. It's not about, going deep on what happened and, often there are privacy concerns and you can't do that anyways.
Right.
But, you want to acknowledge that it was put out there and say, I'm sorry we didn't meet your expectations or, whatever the case may be.
You turn the bad review into a good review then, in my mind, because you've immediately diffused, and you're not belittling the other person or you don't have to make them look bad, but if you have a thoughtful, genuine response out there, I, as a consumer, I'm going to look at it and go, okay, well, I'm probably going to lean towards the attorneys on this one, and maybe the other person was, just a little angry. To me, again, from the consumer side, I think when I look at that, that just adds authenticity to it.
It does. It does. So, people keep that in mind and know that, one review does not necessarily speak for the entire practice.
Yeah, because Tom, I'll tell you, we've seen cases where plan members posted something on, let's say, for example, Yelp, and a war has begun, and you're just like, that's there forever, and many of the times those attorneys can't continue on our network, and I'm sure a lot of other legal plan providers run into the same thing. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that a war with a client is one you'll never win. Especially one that's public.
Yeah.
So, okay, we talked about reviews, good and bad, and then I guess what do we do with them? Once we have them, how do we use them to manage our practice to make it better?
Sure. I mean, there are internal and external ways to, manage your performance, make it better. As you said, Will was talking about a system that's, primarily used for internal purposes, and that's great, to get that feedback and make it actionable.
Right.
With Broadly, we have a system that ties, the review to the person who provided the service. So, that helps, take the, anonymous element out of the review because, ultimately you want to, ensure that you're becoming better continuously.
Right.
And then, externally, use that great feedback in a variety of places. So, if you're getting great feedback on Google, share it on your website, share it on your marketing materials, make sure that you're maximizing the benefit of that great client feedback. There are, lots of different ways to do it. We have, a review stream that's part of our service that, does it automatically on the practice website so that there's no, human task required, but we encourage all forms of sharing, even if it's simply, repurposing it for, a Facebook post, for your practice as well.
Yeah, and I think
Great.
this ties back to what we were talking about earlier too, Tom, is that, and Laura mentioned this, really that's why volume becomes important. That's why, so this sort of cascading event in my mind, it's, if you're not pushing it, if you're not trying to get multiple reviews, you're not going to find gaps in processes, because you can't really, you don't want to run your business by saying one person said this was bad. That's a person's opinion. Whereas if you can have multiple reviews, you'll start to see an experience sort of, coming out of it. And then you'll be able to go, well, there's multiple dings here. There's multiple dings here. This is where we do it positively, and use it both ways. Say, let's make this shine even more. This seems to be what they really like. How do we help them out? How do we make that more? But that's why it becomes even more critical to get as many as possible, because then you start to see trends evolving, versus just letting yourself get hung up on one thing or two things. And as far as managing it. Not to promote, but GLSA obviously has, a lot of the focus the last couple of years has been on, how to deliver service. Because that's what I talk a lot about with attorneys. It's okay, you didn't go to law school to learn how to be, awesome at customer service, unfortunately, right? But there are a lot of tools. Most of the legal plan providers that you're going to work with are going to help you, because that's what they do, right? We're all focused, all the different legal plan providers, on servicing our members and then getting them to the attorneys. So it's really about focusing on that side and aspect of things. Because really a lot of the time too, those reviews aren't about maybe the attorney, right? They could be about some of the issues that people have had with gatekeepers and office staff and other parties. And so it's just addressing them as quickly as you can, I suppose.
Well, I think that's great. It also makes sense in terms of the cumulative rating. That not to take one as a make it or break it review, but it's actually just part of the process of understanding the service being provided and how to improve it. I do know that probably with some lawyers that are listening that might be solos or small firms, they might not have that kind of volume for it, and systems like Broadly has, or others that are available, would be really great in getting some good word of mouth out. But no, I think your system is, as also full disclosure, an ROG network lawyer. I think it's a great system.
And I wanted to hit on one thing too, Tom. I want to speak to Laura. Had a great point that I forgot to clap at earlier too, which is, I think the best way to ask for those reviews is to not necessarily ask, right? Is to have it just sort of baked into your post case or finish up process. Because I know personally, when somebody, I hope you can give me a great review. Well, that's a lot of pressure, and I probably am not going to do it because I feel pushed. But just as part of your outtake process, whether it's sending that final invoice or whatever it might be, if it's a little more seamless, because that's kind of how we handle it, right? Where the customers don't ever necessarily know they're even getting it, and we don't really tell our attorneys to prompt the plan members to fill out that review. They just get it in an email, and we still see a really, really good response rate. So I think that way you can feel like you're getting the truest review. So I just wanted to give her a thumbs up on. I think that's a great point.
So now I wanted to ask you both, and I don't want to put you on the spot, so no names need to be named. And if you remember one, that it's great. If you don't, that's fine too. But what's the most memorable review you've ever read or heard? And Laura, let's start with you. If you remember one that just jogs your memory about being kind of unique, if you could share that with us, or if you want to.
Sure. My role here at Broadly, I'm working across, lots of divisions and functions. So, I do see the reports from time to time of the reviews that are generated on behalf of the businesses that we work with. I will say it's a very interesting industry for the reasons that we've been talking about. It's a more personal engagement than, say, calling a plumber, right?
Right.
So,
Definitely.
the best reviews, I've seen, 4 lawyers really put the experience in the context of their own lives. I think the best ones I've seen are just, the family law, for instance. They're entrusting a legal professional to walk them through this daunting and scary process of a custody battle. And, it's so personal. What's more personal than that? I can't think of one particular one that comes to mind, but I have read ones that are just so, they're heartbreaking and heartwarming and, less about the outcome as we've talked about before and just more about how they felt like they were taken care of and, couldn't have imagined going through that process with anyone else.
I agree. I've seen a lot of hugs occurring in really good reviews in family law cases. I think the most memorable individually was somehow a member got an attorney to come do their will closing while they were poolside because it was such a nice day. So I thought that was pretty good. That was a 10.
That service
I would
there.
say, yeah, I would say, this is going to be crazy, right? But keep your office clean because a lot of bad reviews I have seen deal with, like, it sounds so simple and sounds so crazy, but, office cleanliness and maybe even a few with odor involved have been some bad reviews that I've come across. But it's the simple thing. But like Laura said, I mean, the most memorable for you, there have been a few times where you don't have a dry eye because you're just amazed at how human the interaction is in a really difficult situation. And that's important for all of us. We here have, thousands of plan members call us every day. And I still think it's important just to step back and go, like, every time you're talking to one of those people, you could be helping them out of a really horrible event or helping them with a life-changing event. They want to talk about it, so let them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I hear it every day with clients that I talk to, and I think that as lawyers, sometimes maybe we get a little too analytical about it and focus on the issues and problem solving, which is definitely important, and that's why people look to us as lawyers to help them solve problems. But remembering that we're dealing with someone who's pretty stressed out if they're calling us, and to just bring them to a place where they can feel comfortable about dealing with the problem
I think
is extremely important.
And I think you'll find if you take the lead on this, and Laura, she probably sees it too, you're going to get a lot more good than bad. If you're, and so it's actually going to be an empowering, exercise for you, and maybe be something as you're reading them, it's going to cheer you up on a daily basis versus what we're all afraid of. But like I said, I've been somebody that has been in a position where I've been reviewed quite often, and so I know it is scary, and I get it. But also, that's just the way the world's turning, and if you don't go with it, you're going to stand out in the wrong way.
I do want to thank you both so much for spending your morning with us, and I
Sure.
loved getting to know both of you better and learn so much more about client reviews and not to be so scared about them, and put more trust in them and use them to my advantage. And I'm sure lawyers and legal professionals that are listening in today or might listen to this later, this is some really great information. And Will Peterson and Laura Nelson really know what they're talking about. So I just want to thank you, Will and Laura, again for sharing your time and thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Tom.
And before I close it out, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with everyone? Will?
Well, yeah, not necessarily. I mean, one thing I'll say is, we've been doing a lot of research on this, and one of the things that we didn't bring up today is I know lawyers have concerns about, violating ethical rules for attorneys, asking,
Mhm.
but we continue to see over and over again, and consult your own bar association if you choose that. As long as you've got an established client business relationship, that there isn't a problem with that. So that should be one less barrier for attorneys to have to worry about when they want to start, going down this path of collecting reviews. So that'd be my last little tidbit.
And you, Laura?
Yeah, that's a good point. We get asked that question a lot, and, the FTC rules are more around compensation for reviews and compensation for positive reviews. So,
Right.
if there is a legitimate relationship, there is not a problem. I will say, though, for anyone who wants more information, please get in touch with us at Broadly. Part of our, how we begin an engagement with a law firm is, we take a look at your pages and, provide you with a personalized and free assessment of, how you look today and, how you're being evaluated through the consumer's eyes. So, it's worth a few minutes of your time, and, you'll learn something, even if you decide not to partner with us. So, Tom, you can send out my contact info to the attendees if you're able to, and, I can pair you up with a member of our team to get you started on that.
That sounds great. And well, for everyone listening, I just want to thank you all for attending our teleconference. Client reviews, what are they good for? Absolutely everything, with Will Peterson and Laura Nelson. Again, this is Tom Martin, and I want to thank GLSA again for sponsoring this program. Remember, joining GLSA is just a good way for SLOs and small firms to increase their business, and you should check us out at glsaonline.org. Well, thank you all very much, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.